Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Pune chapter, and our knowledge partner, NextDM, welcome you all for today's session on analytics-driven sales and distribution management. So my name is Ram. I run a company by the name BlueConch Technologies. Many of you who are familiar with us would know us as Expansion. We recently got rebadged to BlueConch Technologies. We are a US headquartered organization and part of the UST Global Group. I'm part of the IACC Pune branch committee as well as the immediate past chairman of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce Pune chapter. So a little bit about IACC itself. We are a 50-plus-year-old organization at the forefront of promoting business ties between Indian companies and US-based organizations. Broadly in three categories. One, we promote business delegations coming into India from the US and vice versa. Also facilitate a lot of interactions between government officials, both here in India as well as in the US. And we also work very closely with various departments within the US consulate. IACC itself is spread across various geographies. We have a presence in Pune, Mumbai, Ahmedabad on the western region. We have presence in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Cochin in the south, Delhi, and Kolkata. In the recent past and since the pandemic, as you all know, the most prominent way of connecting with people have been through webinars like what we are having today. And since March, since April, we have organized more than 20 different webinars as part of IACC, cutting across various topics of interest for our members. So today, once again, inviting you all for this discussion around analytics in the sales and distribution management. So little background regarding sales and distribution management and why and how analytics has become front of center. As you know today, just whether you call it digital e-commerce business or your traditional brick and mortar companies, data is pervasive. It is just pretty much drives how these businesses run. And very important in terms of achieving whether it's customer satisfaction, customer experience, importantly, working capital and financial management, and also to ensure a seamless supply management. And the pandemic very recently, and you all know that the level of disruption it has caused, right? And people were not really prepared to for something as disruptive as this. I'm sure that in many organizations, again, whether it's e-commerce, services, or brick and mortar manufacturing, have been tremendously impacted by this. And and more importantly, it impacts the whole distribution, sales, and the nexus between the suppliers, the manufacturers, and the end customers. So how does systems help us, and more importantly, where does analytics come into play? And again, when you talk about analytics, we typically talk about the underlying data. And in many organizations, data is there. Data might be very discrete, available in various different systems. But then how do we make meaningful sense of this data and information and to be able to make decisions based on it? So to hear more about these topics, we have a panel of experts today. I'll start with the introduction of Sandeep first. So Sandeep Kumar is a Chief of Service Delivery at Call Health Services. Sandeep brings a little over 30 years of experience, has worked at Johnson & Johnson, leading the supply chain for medical equipment and devices. He started his career with Tata Steel, where he also worked with global logistics companies like DHL and TNT Express. Tremendous experience in this field and supply chain in particular. He's an engineer and completed his executive management from IIM Ahmedabad. Sandeep, thanks once again for joining us today and for participating in this program. Our second panelist, Venkat Raman, I'll call him Venkat through the rest of the session. Venkat, I hope that's fine, is the business director at Holographic Incorporated and is responsible for South Asia region. Hologic, sorry, is an American headquartered organization and deals with cancer diagnostics and women health. Coincidentally, he has also had a stint at Johnson & Johnson and in the medical consumable space, handling commercial operations apart from working with Philips and General Electric. He completed his graduation from BITS Pilani and has an MBA from ISB Hyderabad. A third panelist is Amit Kumar. Amit Kumar is a director, business advisory for intelligent automation and accelerated analytics, called IA3 or IA raised to 3 at Nextium Private Limited. He's responsible for growing IA3 practice globally and providing thought leadership for the emerging industry trends. He drives the value from data initiative at Nextium, which helps clients realize the potential of data. He's an aerospace engineer by qualification and holds an MTech and a BTech degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. He has 13 plus years of experience in advanced analytics and data science. So clearly a great panel, a lot of expertise, both in depth and breadth of experience in the supply chain as well as in the analytics space. So over the next several minutes, we are going to hear from them, their journey, their experience working in this space, understand the challenges, how they have used technology and analytics to solve their business problems. And towards the end, we will take questions from you so we can make this as interactive as possible given the constraints. And as you all know, just the hygiene factors here, it's going to be on a listen-only mode, so you may have to stay on mute. And any questions you have, you may post them on the chat box that's on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will address your queries towards the end of the webinar. So without taking any more time, so getting started, I'm going to start with first question to Sandeep. Sandeep, when you look at the current scenario, what are the challenges you see in managing the broad sales and distribution function?
Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for joining. And from the perspective of the entire sales and distribution mechanism or the system which multiple companies are operating with, the first and the foremost issue is in terms of the visibility, the data visibility. And when I say data visibility, the data is available within the organization in bits and pieces, in various pockets. And I'll give you one example. If a company has a set of distributor network, and I'm just giving an example referring to the Johnson & Johnson itself, where we had almost 800 plus distributors across India. Now, the biggest issue is that these distributors are onboarded at various times for various franchise and franchise operations or various products and the segments. But these people do not have any unified technological base where they are able, while they capture the data in their own data system or data management system, but from an organization perspective, J&J does not have that visibility because it's very difficult to have that API integration with such large distributor network who has all individual system and analytics what is available with them, and that brings complete lack of visibility from the organization perspective to manage entire distribution network. That's the first and foremost. The second aspect, the other critical important aspect is if your organization and the company is under various product segments and the number of SKUs what you are handling. Again, J&J has 8 franchise operations where are different products and services of almost 35 to 40,000 SKUs are there. Now, with such a large expanse of product portfolio, it's very difficult again to really do the optimization in terms of the entire network. And when I say optimization, it has 2 aspects of it. One is the inventory, and second one is the availability. So in the supply chain terminology, we say that the the line item fill rate, when I say availability, that every SKU to be available against a particular order being put across by any company or any organization or any buyer. When it comes to in terms of inventory management, you have to live with a lot of dead stock. And when I say dead stock, probably the order may have 1 or 2 limiting line items, but in order to fulfill that order, you have to have those dead stock or those slow moving items as well, because you can't face the issue of stock out or those situations where you are not able to fulfill these orders. So these are the few of the larger challenges. I'm just keeping it only to the large broad-based level. And as we move along, we will discuss it further. But those are the key challenges which I have experienced it during my operations with multiple companies, including J&J.
Thank you, Sandeep. Moving on to Venkat. Venkat, what has been your experience?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's first of all pleasure to be part of this discussion. Quickly jumping into the question. So Ram, I look at it from a different perspective where I have spent the past 6-7 years working in the diagnostic space, the imaging, diagnostic imaging and capital equipment space, right? So the current pandemic situation has introduced a huge amount of uncertainty into the mix. Now, if you look at any customer buying a capital equipment, in general, they have a lot of uncertainty already, even during a normal, buying process. And because of the various options available, and because of the vague nature of the system and the various expectations each of the stakeholders in the buying process has, there is a lot of uncertainty already built in, and this situation has definitely compounded and really added to that uncertainty. So as a result of which, the challenges which we are currently facing from a sales perspective is the fact that customers are postponing their investments, are delaying projects that were already on the verge of being executed. So these are in general a very challenging scenario that companies are facing now in the sales space. As far as distribution is concerned, it's as you mentioned during the introductory remarks, there is a disruption in every single part of the supply chain, right from manufacturing. We are experiencing shortage of raw material, shortage of which is resulting in shortage of the finished goods. And of course, in terms of the logistics itself, there is a lot of uncertainty in terms of the expected timelines for delivery. The lead times that we need to factor in are all going for a toss. So in a nutshell, if I were to sum it up, the biggest challenge that we are seeing both in sales and distribution is the uncertainty that is really creeped in, and which is becoming unpredictable, right?
Yeah. So good insights, both Sandeep as well as Venkat. You spoke about uncertainty, and at the same time the complexity, given the fact that you got so many distributors. The whole ecosystem has got established over a long period of time, right? So there are a lot of legacy systems in place, and at the same time, something of this proportion, the pandemic and the impact of that pandemic, and the uncertainty that you mentioned. Given all this, how do we make sense of how do you plan for the future? What do you plan for the next 3 months? What do you plan for the next 12 months? So since you both spoke from manufacturing and distribution perspective, I'd like to go to Amit and hear. Amit, you come from a little bit of the other side of the world. I won't say some manufacturing, but would like to hear your perspectives on the same subject, and how can you reflect on what you just heard from both Sandeep and Venkat?
Sure, thanks, Ram, and thanks for the audience for joining. So I'll just add a couple of other perspective. So what has happened is because of COVID-19 is there has been both a supply shock as well as demand shock. Because of the lockdown, people not able to move out of their home. There's a demand shock as well because they're not able to manufacture in factories. It's a supply shock as well. And this is pretty much for a long time, the first time that's actually both them happening together itself. Even the financial crisis was liquidity. It was never the financial crisis of 2008 and 9 was more towards financial shock and not really demand and supply shock. So due to that, what has happened is that the entire business cycles they got become stuck itself at this point of time, and this has led to a liquidity crisis, which has happened at the company level as well. It has happened in the distributor level as well, and finally customer level as well. So there have been differential challenges in each of the entire supply chain itself, and hence it's important for from a challenge perspective for a company realize the challenges for a distributor understand challenges of customer, and vice versa, right? So I think that itself is one piece which different entities has to realize, and that's a challenge which is maybe this information asymmetry at this point of time across the entire supply chain itself. Another point I want to bring across is the behavioral change aspect. So far the sales guys were going into the market, the distribution guys are going into the market and talking to the customers directly, be it retailers or it's a healthcare, to be hospitals and pharmacies as well, right? So that has now reduced significantly. It has to happen virtually or over call now. So with that being the case, there's need for adaptation suddenly for the entire function and different person itself to have, and we're expecting the sales guys to adapt and still be able to fulfill their goals, and we are able to monitor them, right? So there are too many moving pieces at this point of time, which are happening as a challenge. On a plus point, I feel that the government at least has, or most of the government in the world have put out different stimuluses, and be the developed economy or developing economy. So that is expected to help on the liquidity front, and hopefully this entire cycle will start moving forward again. So I think that's a few perspectives from my side.
Very nice. Thanks, Amit. And like you said, this uncertainty leads to constraints on the working capital. There's only so much you can decide and plan for. How much do you stock? If you stock too much because of a supply crunch, you're going to eat into your working capital. And if you stock too little, it's going to impact your production, right? And the other thing that Sandeep alluded to earlier is the integration that's required within the whole distribution network. And one of the key elements is that not every distributor is going to be very IT enabled or technology enabled with the right systems in place that you can seamlessly move data from supplier to manufacturer and so on and so forth. So given that, and now we are talking about analytics, right? For analytics to happen, you need to have the underlying systems in place, the data needs to be there. And like I mentioned earlier, the data is very discrete. There's just all kinds of data all over the place, and you're trying to build analytical solutions on top of it to make meaningful decisions. So in that context, I would like your opinion in terms of even primarily, how can we use analytics and technologies to effectively manage sales and distribution function? I'll probably start again with Sandeep here.
Sure. So the ideal approach, and because keeping all the aspects what really Venkat spoke about, even Amit spoke about, it's a balancing which every organization has to do in terms of the utilization of the capacity, both in terms of the sales force, in terms of the working capital bandwidth what they have. So rather at this pandemic stage, whatever we need to do is, ideally, if given a choice, which we would have done, is focus on the top 20% of the entire product portfolio of yours. If you are able to match that 20% with that 20/80, that particular parlance, where you are able to at least make sure that your entire value chain, right from the raw material availability to the finishing goods and then reaching out to the end customers, that's the one flow of product and information flow that is taken care. The other side is in terms of the entire finance flow which can be taken care. If these three elements in just focused approach, because if we go for the whole hog approach, we may not land up anywhere. So the whole perspective would be that let's look at these certain product items. Let's make sure that there are defined set of your key distributors. You have defined set of supply chain partners, whether it is international partners or the domestic players distribution system, and then really focus on urban and semi-urban areas itself. Because I'm saying, because last mile delivery in any case in India has been a big challenge right from the old days. So even none of the organization has been able to crack that last mile delivery. When you look at the tier 2, tier 3 cities, Now, at this stage, if we want to really work on that model and try to, optimize your sales and distribution there, it will be a Herculean task because there are multiple states which you will come across. The other aspect is that because there are various governing rules state to state, whether it is movement by road, surface, or rail, or whether by air, these are very restrictive in terms of your environmental or in the entire pandemic situation. So one has to really focus on top products, then the top distributors, and make sure that you are running with the maximum optimized working capital. And that's the only way I see it that we could really work towards improving whatever productivity efficiency. And when it comes to the sales fraternity in terms of virtually connecting, those are the distributors where there is a possibility of virtually able to connect with them. And sales is all about connectivity. Unless until there is a person-to-person connectivity, you are not able to sell either your services or product. So if you are able to really carve out a clear strategy that let's focus on optimized distributor network, optimized product portfolio with an optimized sales resource, which is able to drive certain set of profitability and the entire operational efficiency, then that's what we should look at this stage.
Thanks, Sandeep. That the point on optimization is well taken. Before I, go to Venkat, there is a poll question that we have that would help us understand the audience and their background. So if you can please, Rishu, if you can put up the poll question here. So it talks about, do you have a distribution network? If yes, I can't read the, give me a second. The other window is just hiding the question. Okay, so do you have a distribution network? If yes, in terms of number of distributors, which category do you fall in? Do you have up to 20, 21 to 100, 100 to 500, and 500 plus? So this will help determine the demography of the audience here today. So moving on, going back to Venkat. Venkat, again, just to reiterate the question. So in your opinion, how do you see tech analytics and technology in particular can help effectively manage these functions?
So from my experience, Ram, what I've seen is that necessity obviously has become the mother of invention. So the reliance on individual salespeople with a high dependence on interpersonal skills, like Sandeep mentioned, is a typical trait of expected of a salesperson, right? So they thrive on establishing that interpersonal relationship with the potential buyers, and that plays a big role in the ultimate decision in their favor, right? Now, given the current scenario, obviously they need to adapt, and they need to evolve, if I may use that word. Otherwise, it's very tough to survive in this scenario. So obviously, I have been at the forefront of pushing my teams to adopt technology for even discussions which used to be taken for granted as a face-to-face discussion in the past. And that's the easier part. Now, if it's a product like Sandeep would know, J&J, the salespeople are expected to be in the operation theaters with the surgeons or the users, and they are expected to demonstrate the products. So how are you going to do that without being able to physically be present inside the customer place? So, and also in terms of training or upskilling customers, like that's a very important aspect of the business, especially in healthcare, because it's very crucial that the customers gain the experience of having used a product or had the tactile and feel of the product in their hands. So you need somebody to guide them on that. So these are all things which technology can play a big role in terms of we are also working on virtual training platforms, which will aid the customers. We already have done a pilot launch, and we are hoping to launch it in India very shortly. So which will basically aid customers to try out the platform and try out the products virtually and get a good idea of what they are buying into. Similarly, demonstrations, we are figuring out how to do it virtually, right? So in terms of distribution, I would go back to what Sandeep said, prioritization, right? You have to have a very clear understanding of what has worked. For this, probably you need to analyze your past data and look at what has worked in the past. It could be the top refined list of customers whom you might want to approach, or in terms of the priorities that you want to dedicate your resources, the best resources to the job at hand. So this is where you will need access to data and also the technology to analyze that data. So this is something which where technology will play a big role in terms of ensuring that we put in our efforts towards the right goals.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Just the poll results are here before I go to Amit. Good 57% of them have less than 20 distributors here, and the rest of them are distributed between 21 and 100, and about 15% above 500. So it's a fair mix, but gravitating towards under 20. So to that extent, should have better control on the operations. Going back to the question itself, right? You spoke about both Sandeep and Venkat. You guys spoke about the necessity is the mother of all inventions, and how it has impacted the behavior, the need for optimization, and how you need to prioritize to do all this. So going back to Amit, how do you think analytics can help in while there are behavioral changes, systemic changes? How can analytics help in effectively managing sales and distribution?
Sure. Thanks, Ram. Great to hear views from Venkat and Sandeep. So my perspective on this is, so if I look at it at an overall level, what I understand to do, right? So at the core of it, it's trying to provide the right information and the right insight at the right time. That's a core goal, ultimately from analytics perspective. So in a situation like what is it right now in COVID or even otherwise per se, it's very important for us to feed the right information to the sales guys who would be talking to their customers itself. So for example, Venkat spoke about looking at the past customer trends, looking at the past behavior. So that's something we should be available to the sales guys, and we should also guide them in terms of who to prioritize more in. So Sandeep spoke about 20%, for example, right? So those analysis can be baked in to actually also define, let's say, who are the customers that the sales guy should be focusing more on, even virtually, for example. And along with that, if we are able to focus on the customer, keeping the center of this, and try to understand a bit more about what customer is going through, and using some of the external information. There's a lot of external information also available, and nowadays of which area is more impacted, which area is less impacted, which kind of geographies, as well as which kind of sectors. It will also help us determine not only from our perspective of what has happened previously and determine 20% basis that, but also in terms of what the customer is going through, and hence would he be able to actually sell more that we are looking for with respect to that. So that's one key point. So essentially kind of shifting from sales driven approaches to customer centric approach is one of the point that I'm trying to make. The second part is for this, the system has to be in place. So we have to essentially move from erstwhile MS reporting kind of a view where we have all the different information being there, to a way in which it can be actionable dashboards or analysis driven dashboards itself, which can already have a lot of this information that we're looking for itself. So for example, we have worked with a number of clients, big and small, which are increasingly looking for dashboards which are not reporting dashboards, but more and more detailed analysis dashboards. They want to know about how the customer journeys. They want to know whether the customers, I mean, say customers, it would healthcare cases could mean hospitals and pharmacies. For retail, for retailers, it would be for the FMCG one. So those are the ones that they would want to know more if the wallet size increasing or not. Are they able to sell more SKUs or not to them, or the SKUs bucket is reducing. So those are the kind of things which where analytics can help by providing those information to be actionable directly as well. Also, another aspect to consider would be customer experience. So in certain companies, they might already platforms to input what a discussion has happened with the customer, and when did we actually talk to them. So in those companies which we already have those metrics put in, we can also judge how the customer is feeling right now, which again will help us determine and prioritize in this COVID scenario, which is going to be slightly longer than what we hoped for, right? So we have to keep on adapting during this process as well. So
Thanks,
that's
Amit.
about
Just curious to know, I mean, you spoke about having the customer insights, and the good thing today is that the information is not just captive, in a captive environment, right? You can Google, and you can there's a lot of research companies that can really talk about what's happening in the customer world and understand the geographical impact and other things. Just curious to know that, do you also foresee a need to understand on the supply side, insights on the supply side, because that's going to ultimately have an impact on your customer experience?
Yes, absolutely. So I think from a supply side, so when we want to look at it, we have to look at it holistically itself, right? And what I think, if we keep the customer at the centerpiece of it, then we would get to know, we have to understand his concerns of his liquidity pressures which are coming, which is a combination of demand and supply at his level itself. So for example, and it need not be only from a COVID perspective, it can be in regular perspective as well. So for example, in a particular case, there might be floods in certain regions, right? Or there might be certain interest rate changes at it's a macro level. All those do impact the customer. So we have to holistically look at the customer as center piece of it, and then be able to determine our strategy accordingly.
Okay. So that what, from whatever you all mentioned, what I understand is that this is now inevitable. You need to have technology solutions, because you can't just sit in front of a crystal ball all the time, and especially with the kind of disruption that we are getting used to in recent times, right? So, but to implement technology solutions isn't all that straightforward either. I mean, those who are from an IT background would be able to talk about it. So let's move to the third question. That's the logical next one, is that what challenges do you see, in terms of implementing these kind of solutions? Just to paraphrase it, while we all agree on the potential benefits, it can't be a smooth process. So what were the challenges that you faced while implementing analytics, leveraging technologies? So Venkat.
Okay. The main challenge I have experienced in the past is adoption. So if you introduce any new technology, there is always a resistance to it. Any change in the well-entrenched process, there is going to be a lot of resistance from the key people on whom the success of the processes depend, the success of the change is dependent on, right? So that's very, very, very crucial part of it, where you need to have a very sound strategy to drive adoption. It could be, a dictatorial approach, or it could be, something to motivate or incentivize the key stakeholders. Whatever may be the approach that suits your organization or your team, but you need to have a very clear-cut strategy on ensuring that it's adopted. Otherwise, there is no point in bringing in a technology which just for the sake of it. The second challenge I have seen is that there's always a lot of information available once you have a technology or a analytics platform rolled out. there is a lot of information, but you need to sift through it to glean the insights, right? So that is a big challenge that I've always faced, where we have great platforms that can churn out report after report, but the relevant insights that that a particular leader is looking for is what it should be able to throw out, right? So that's the second challenge I've always faced in terms of getting the relevant data and pointing me towards the insights that I am looking for.
Okay, so I just want to be cautious of all the, also sensitive about the time. So Sandeep, I'd like to have a brief feedback from you on this.
Sure. So, frankly speaking, in this entire challenges, so there are only two types of companies which most of the time I have come across. One, which already has certain base structure. When I say base structure, means there is a technology support which is available with the organization. Although they are a brick and mortar company, there is a product portfolio and all, and services they are defined, but there is a structure. So there is a technology support mechanism which is existing. Other one is someone which is so focused in terms of the operational efficiency, distribution efficiency, looking at the production or manufacturing efficiency, that they are looking mostly from the efficiency perspective when it comes to the entire setup and the entire flow, but not looking too much into technology, or there's no dedicated technology setup. Now, adoption for companies which has a technology team, already there is a wheel. So there it becomes not an issue, but only it's about creating a project team, creating a ROI, providing an ROI, providing various kinds of enhancement in productivity and efficiency, which can sail through within the organization for getting the investment which is required, because you need to invest time, money, and everything for building any technology solution. On the other side, when you are in that mode where there is good technology support, you have to really outsource it. Then the challenge is that the outsourced partner of technology would require the nitty-gritty from the parent company to provide them those input. Now, the input which is required and what kind of expertise, because again, those expertise lies in various pockets and segments. Somebody who is able to define entire sales and distribution cycle, the input, and then basis that the technology, building a technology for that is again a larger issue, because that's something which we have faced. Because there what happens is that it goes back and forth in terms of really understanding the need and really aligning the technology solution whatever is required. So these are the primary challenges in certain scenarios which I have come across.
Okay, very nice. There are two different and very interesting perspectives, Venkat and Sandeep. So Amit, I'll just move on to the next question actually, and maybe you may want to help respond to the two challenges that Venkat and Sandeep spoke about. Is how do you address these, right? Sandeep spoke about the technology side of things. If you have an outsourced partner, they may or may not essentially understand your business, but may have a good technology understanding. And on the other hand, the challenge that Venkat spoke about was, okay, I have the solution, but the change management, the ability to adapt, the behavioral changes that are required. And I've seen this in my past life when I was working in a manufacturing company. The response often used to be, hey, we've done this business for the last 30 years without this system. So I don't see what's going to change for the next 30 years if I do not use it. So, how would you consult if these are the challenges that guys like me, Venkat, and Sandeep had to face? How would you address this problem for us?
Sure. So very interesting, right? So in terms of this is the industry challenges, what usually there as well. So let me first look to answer the one which Venkat spoke about. So Venkat spoke about two parts. One is the change management part, right? So what I feel is, and what I've seen is that there has to be a stakeholder buy-in at the top level itself while we are starting it off itself. Either has to come from the CXO level, or it's ideally at the CEO level of that particular unit, for example. So that has to be driven in the beginning, like Venkat also meant, that has to be pushed through initially for getting people to participate in, because there's initial inertia which is itself is there. So there has to be that initial buy-in to come from the top management. Secondly, we also need to look at the quick wins in these approaches, where you can pick up a use case which is a decent priority one. It may not be the top priority, or decent priority one, which we think can be easily solved, and we can demonstrate a quick value out of it. Because once the value is created, automatically there's attraction with respect to that. Okay, this division able to create this particular value, maybe I can also look at that. So then a kind of healthy competition starts subsequently, and it essentially can be addressed. Then slow change still. It will not be immediate. There will always be distractors as well in all the companies. But at least with the promoters, we have to keep feeding them the information and the value itself. Once and over a period of time, we have seen different companies slowly turn around with respect to it itself. So that's from perspective of change management part. Venkat also spoke about the expertise part as well, and which I think was a point which Sandeep was also making in terms of expertise of able to convert from data to final in terms of insights, or in terms of be it from a internal team perspective or external team perspective as well. So interestingly, I have worked on the business side as well. I have actually led teams within companies, and also have consulted companies as well. So I have so from that perspective, I understand where everybody is coming from. So my view on that is that from expertise perspective, it cannot be a one project game itself, that you do something and you move out, and you get somebody in, let's say third party, and it moves out, because then then somebody has to take the entire ownership of driving that process change and education as part of it, the change management as well. So it normally works better if it's a partnership on a continuous engagement, where you are, let's say, partnering with third party provider, then you keep on throwing different projects at them while they keep on monitoring the earlier project, ensuring that they were able to influence more and more people inside the ecosystem at the company end to able to drive the process forward itself. So the continuous monitoring, evaluation, optimization needs to be looked at itself, because when it goes into building a fantastic solution to implementation, there's still some changes required, and they would always come back with this: the 5 problems I'm facing right now, and those would need to be solved by the teams which are working along with it. It might require automation, for example, or it might require something else. So hence the continuous engagement normally I've seen works better, because in that case they would come as this team as a problem solver kind of a team, that okay, I'm facing the challenge, let's go to these guys, these are the expertise in this, they will solve it for us, and we're able to move forward subsequently. And that helps build that trust factor, which is the most critical actually. So the biggest challenge actually is trust, not even change management. They would want to trust the solution before they move forward. So hence somebody at the face of it normally helps in that. And I will just call out one extra challenge as well. I hope I've answered the question from Sandeep and Venkat. And the key thing which Sandeep spoke in the beginning, right, where he spoke about data coming from different distributors. You have hundreds of distributors. Even in the audience, we have cases where people have 500 plus distributors, right? Getting data from them, consolidating it, combining it, standardizing it, and then validating it, and in a time-bound manner to get insights from it is a big difficulty, which is usually there. So we have seen for different clients of ours, we had to actually develop customized tool itself, because every client per se is different, every systems is different. So that's something which and sometimes the standardized solution may not help, because they're assuming that the workflow still can be changed, which gets into another change management exercise altogether itself. So I think that's another point I wanted to just mention, that another challenge which I see in sales and marketing is just getting data from distributors itself, and that's a possible way of tackling it as well.
So let me pivot here for a moment and see if I can get the last poll question on the screen. Yeah, the question for everyone is: do you get visibility of the secondary sales data? Select one: completely visible, complete visibility, partial visibility, or no visibility. So on that, I'll go back to the last question for the session today. Would like to hear what kind of a crystal ball predictions that you all have in terms of, with this current pandemic and everybody keeps using the word new normal. It's no longer a new normal. That's become a way of life already. So from a business perspective, what do you foresee? What challenges do you foresee, and especially in the sales and distribution strategies?
You asked me?
Yeah, I'll start with Sandeep. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just during the session itself, I was just telling all of you that I'm operating from the office. Yeah. So now the biggest challenge, I'll tell you, my family tells me, or my daughters tell me, Papa, do you know that you are exposing all of us to this COVID-19? You are roaming around outside the house, you are going, meeting people, but that's the first and the foremost challenge. I'm bringing the perspective of the human behavior here. Now, we expect all kinds of modalities unfortunately, in operations where there's a physical presence required. If you are managing a distributor network, if you are managing supply chain, if you are managing the plant, you are managing raw material supply, you are managing operations, and then you are trying to drive. And even virtually, even if you are trying to sell virtually, at times our salespeople will have to go and meet those large distributors, large corporates, or large suppliers. Now, the biggest challenge is that are we all really knowledgeable enough to really understand that going out or moving out or meeting people in this situation, which is going to be a new normal, is not always risky, as long as you take various precautionary measures. So I'll just reiterate here that there are various precautionary measures which you have to take, and where WHO guidelines, government is trying to promote, Arogya Setu app is being promoted. So we have to live with it. And this is not going to end in 3 months, 6 months time, because we keep hearing about the vaccines and all, but I don't know, nobody has seen the final outcome. So the first and the foremost thing is to take your family along with you. That is going to be new normal. Second aspect is that as much as virtual connectivity is there, but you will have, there are certain mandatory work which has to be required to have that physical presence, and those physical presence is unavoidable. Now, if you have to operate a airplane, then a pilot has to be there, so he can't virtually run the plane. Now, that's the biggest issue, and that's how we have to make sure that there are very clear guidelines and work on rotational basis. When I say that, rather than exposing somebody individually, make teams, and a lot of companies have moved around. They have reduced the infrastructure cost by really making a lot of non-operational activity virtual. So that's new normal, where restrict or try to save money from the infrastructure cost. If you have large warehouses, because your distributor network is not going to work, then you rethink and relook at the warehouses in terms of that, how do you stock those inventory closer to the market so that you reduce those costs. Now the GST is applicable, so it doesn't make any tax benefit or tax advantage you have with larger warehouses and all. So look at the entire distributor network. Then the third part, which is there, is from the technology input perspective. While I understand that it's very difficult to integrate various partners across same, but you can really have those CSV file download, decide on the frequency at which the data should be supplied across to you, and we'll have to find a way out, because today if you are going to build some technology with multiple partners, you are not going to land up anywhere. So as is where is basis, if very quickly we can adopt to what is the best practice which can be adopted and really work on entire your sales and distribution planning, that would be my recommendation at this stage.
Thank you, Sandeep. So response to the second poll question, give me a second. Again, I'm getting my screen here. Partial visibility, that's what majority of them have said, almost 60%, no visibility 20%, and complete visibility 20%. So going back to the question on visibility into the future, and what sales and distribution strategies you're thinking of to align with the new normal. We got just 9 minutes, so I'd like a quick response from you, Venkat, and a quick response from Amit before we take questions from the audience.
Right. So quick response. This new normal, as you said, is here to stay. We will see the emergence of new ways to approach the market. We will see the emergence of new type of a salesperson who, like I mentioned earlier, a typical salesperson was largely dependent on interpersonal relationships. That will probably that will probably change to a certain extent with the salesperson becoming more digitally savvy, and because the customers are also willing to connect virtually in the current scenario of pandemic. So that will be the new normal. There will be an emergence of a different type of personnel who are driving sales. And in distribution, like I mentioned earlier, there will be a lot more reliance on data, and that will lead to prioritization of efforts and resources towards specific opportunities rather than going after the, let's say, all the opportunities that you currently can see. So that's very crucial thing which will happen, that has to happen if an organization has to survive in this scenario.
Very nice. So data is going to give you a competitive advantage, data insights. So Amit, any closing remarks from you?
Sure. Thanks, Ram. So I have, from a new normal perspective, I do see that this COVID is accelerating towards technology adoption and moving towards data and analytics itself. So what I see is over a period of time, it will move towards a truly analytics-powered sales engine itself for organizations, where the analytics and data is looked across the entire sales itself, right from things like automation of information coming from distributors, getting data from distributors through customized tools, to analyzed by the analytics experts and creating insights. That insights would even go into advanced things that able to predict which customers like to buy when and what and at what time itself, right? So which customer is likely to buy extra SKU from you right now, which is not currently buying, which is similar his customer profiles are currently buying itself, right? So is able to provide those pinpointed information to sales guys to go and let's support them with this information. Then the sales guy can look through the information and then able to put those key messages through in their conversations itself. So I do see this moving towards it through the use of advanced analytics and predictive models. So it will become similar to B2C. If you look at B2C, right, this kind of things are already happening, which has now moved to B2B currently. So I do see that change also coming to B2B over a period of time. So personalization will be new mantra. Also, the dissemination of this information to sales guys at the right time is also going to be critical. So I do see things like technology helping with, for example, apps through web portals or even chatbots for that matter, where the sales guy can ask a question and he will give you the information which he's looking for. It's also the dissemination of information from corporate team to the sales team becomes seamless, with customer be the center point of this, and so that they're able to finally get the value they're looking for the data that they have aggregated over a period of time. That's okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We got last 5 minutes. I have 2 questions. The first 2 questions looks very similar, so I'm going to read it out. I just need one response on this. We face a lot of reconciliation issues in data coming from distributors and coming from internal systems. How do we handle this? A very related question. There are high number of distributors with various systems. How do we get secondary data? So the 2 questions seems to be related with the backward and forward compatibility and movement of data. So Amit, you want to answer this?
Sure. So what we have done usually in cases, this is standard problem, right, across industries, because you have 100+ distributors, you have different ERPs and different versions of it. That information is coming from multiple places, different formats, and then the entire reconciliation of that. So what we have done is for different ones that we have looked at the entire process of it and look to build customized tools around that, where the information would come from, let's say, 100 distributors in their own respective formats. So the work of distributor and also reduces, and then we are able to look at data and able to convert into standardized form itself. Now,
Right.
one of the key question here is what are data accuracy itself, right? So in that case, what we done also done is basis the business we have all and what they have experienced so far. We also try to build in different validation checks itself. A simple case as, for example, last month's inventory position should be closing stock should be equal to opening of this month's stock. A very simple
Right.
case, right?
Right.
So that itself can be automated itself. And in case it's not matching, then we have to reach back to the distributor itself to get that sorted out. And similarly, a lot of other things, things like if let's say a particular SKU is not there, or particular SKU which if we're getting from distributor is not part of the masters, it might mean that may not be a SKU itself, right? So again, we will check back on that. So a lot of those checks we have built in for this customized tools, which is specific to the business being looked at. So that is those things normally helps. And then it can be the follow-ups can also be done by different teams. It can be business team, that can be our teams, so that the entire process of getting data become seamless, at least from business perspective itself. So that we take the entire responsibility.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all four of you. Including the support that we received from Rishu and her team on the back end. So we got a lot of good insights, and just try to quickly summarize. And before I do that, I'm sure audience may have some more questions. Please feel free to send your questions over an email to thinknext@nextdm.com. So I'll read it out: thinknext@nextdm.com. So send your emails, and the panel would be very happy to respond back to you with details. So I'll again go back and pick from what Venkat mentioned earlier, that necessity is the mother of all invention. And I think that's what we've seen in the last several months. Just takes me back to a book I've read back in the days by an author called D.H. Lawrence. I'm sure some of you must have heard of him back in early 1930s. And he writes that ours is essentially a tragic age, and so we refuse to take it tragically. So, and if I think about it today, I think, the way we all, I mean, whether it is at a personal level or at a business level, have responded is tremendous. And that's going to lead to further proliferation of technology solutions. Adoption is going to definitely increase because people are learning and understanding the values and virtues of using, whether it's data sciences or high network solutions that will help us to not only overcome these challenges but also to grow and prosper, right? And some of the points that I picked up from everything you mentioned, Sandeep spoke about prioritization. I thought that was a very good insight and input. You spoke about, Venkat, you spoke about adapt and evolve. I thought that was that's definitely applicable, not just in sales and distribution, but in just about everything that we do. And all the feedbacks and inputs, Amit, that you shared, I think they were all valuable. So thank you so much. We are just dot on time. It's 5 p.m. And again, thanks to the audience for being a part of this discussion. I thought was wonderful and very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.